Hi, and welcome to a discussion on the 5 fatal flaws of marketing most companies make and how to solve them. So the first fatal flaw is lack of planning. The problem is that most companies don't do any planning at all. The majority of them just are so heads down in doing the day-to-day work of the organization that they don't take that moment to pause and look at where they want to go with the company moving forward. They don't have a formalized business planning process. They don't have a formalized marketing and sales planning process. So they're just not doing any planning. And if they are doing planning, well, that's my second category. They're doing limited planning. And what do I mean by limited planning? Well, either the planning is too small in scope, they're not taking enough into consideration as they create that plan, or they're doing it in kind of an ivory tower. They're doing it without buy-in from all the parties that are going to be involved in really taking that plan and putting it into action. So that's all your key managers, all your departments that are going to have to run with that plan and make sure that it works for them. So no planning at all, limited planning. And my last one, immortal planning. So that's when an organization will create a plan, and they did it maybe, let's say, a few years ago, and no one has touched it. No one has touched it since then. There's been no updates. There's been no review of it. It becomes this document that sits on a shelf somewhere gathering dust without any relevance for helping move the company forward. So how do you get around fatal flaw number one? How do you get around lack of planning? Well, the solution, first and foremost, is to implement a planning and review process, a schedule. Simple enough. You say, okay, this is part of who we are. This is what we do. We're going to have a time of year that we're going to create the business plan, the marketing plan for next year. And we're going to have a regular schedule of when we review it. So at the end of each quarter, let's say, we're going to sit down and we're going to look at that marketing plan and see if it still works, what things we need to adjust, how the world has changed since we created that plan the previous year. Secondly, you're going to have a planning champion. You're going to have somebody inside who's going to have the power and the responsibility to get everybody together at that table to have those discussions, both in the initial planning and in the follow-up discussions, the reviews. Of course, my third point, you're going to need to socialize that plan for strengths and weaknesses. So once you create something, you need to give it out to those folks who, again, are your key managers, your people on the line, the sales folks, the people who are going to be actually instituting that plan to see if it's going to work, to see what problems they might find in it. And they can give buy-in. And that's going to really help you have a successful plan, because once they buy in, they're part of it. They're part of that effort and energy to move the company forward. So a final note on planning, and notice I've got it underlined. Things changing is not an excuse for not planning. Sure, absolutely. You're going to write this great plan, and a couple of months are going to go by, and something's going to happen, and you're like, wow, we really need to change things a bit. But your plan is a point of departure. It's a place you start from. And absolutely, you need to adjust over time to make sure the plan is still relevant with current economic conditions, changes from the competition, changes in your customers' needs. Sure, but you start with that point of departure.